Welcome to the Advanced Projects by Progressus training video on sales order, sales invoice usage. In this video, we'll cover a new functionality added to Advanced Projects by Progressus to record usage with sales orders, sales invoices, without having to do separate cost entries later and apply them to the sales entry. Generally, clients want their sales orders to be based on the budgeted demand, including inventory expenses or resources. So to provide this integration, you can now do the invoicing through the sales order or through the project. We'll have a review of the setup options for creating usage settings through sales orders and sales invoices, as well as options for determining when the sales order or sales invoice is invoiced. First, we'll take a look at some fields in project setup that need to be configured for the sales order, sales invoice usage feature to work correctly. From the Role Center, select Setup, Project Setup. And again, Project Setup. In Project Setup, scroll to and expand the Invoicing Fast tab and locate the Sales Order Invoiced field. In this field, we have two options, at shipment and through project. Next, the Sales Order Creates Usage field. If this Boolean is true, then it will create usage on the project through a project ledger entry when you post the sales order. The Sales Invoice Creates Usage field. If this Boolean is true, then it will create usage on the project through a project ledger entry when you post the sales invoice. Let's review what the sales order invoiced options will do. If we select at shipment, it means you will generally create the sales orders manually or from the job planning lines for an item, an expense, or a resource. So based on the normal advanced projects process, when you do a shipment, the product is invoiced at the price on the line. If you have the Sales Order Creates Usage enabled, it will create a job ledger entry in the project ledger using the cost. Now what happens is that it creates a usage entry, and with Sales Order Invoice option set to at shipment, it creates a sales entry. These entries will then be applied to each other and then will be closed. The second option under Sales Order Invoiced is through project. It works in a similar way to the previous option, where you create a manual sales order or from the job planning lines for an item, resource, or expense. The process will follow the normal advanced project process. When you do a shipment, the product is invoiced at zero price. The zero price line is closed by the normal Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central process. This then lets us do the billing through the project. If Sales Order Create Usage is set to true, and the sales order invoiced is set to through project, then it will create a usage entry, and a job ledger entry will be updated to the project ledger. In addition, no invoice is created at the time of shipment. You will then bill the usage through Progressus Advanced Projects. If you don't want to post the usage cost, then invoice pricing would post to the ledger with zero cost and remain until it's invoiced. Next, we'll take a look at the process where the Sales Order Invoice field in Project Setup is set to at shipment, and the Sales Order Creates Usage is set to true. These values default into Project Setup when you use a project template and set up the values there. There are a few other scenarios where you create the project from the project wizard, the project card, or from the template, and we'll look at those next. Let's go into creating the project template. From the Role Center, select Setup, Template Setup, Project Template. From the ribbon, select New to create a new template. If you create a new template and scroll to the Invoicing Fast tab, you'll see settings for Sales Order Creates Usage and Sales Invoice Creates Usage, and Sales Order Invoiced all default from the Project Setup. Next, we'll create a new project using this Sales Order Sales Invoice template we just created. Navigate back to the Role Center and select Create Project Wizard. From the Project Template field, select the new Sales Order Sales Invoice Project Template and click Next. Notice that the values shown in the Project Wizard were taken from those that we set up in the Sales Order Sales Invoice Project Template. Note too that if you have a contract number selected in the Project Wizard along with the SOCI template, the values from the contract take precedence. Let's go to this contract and review the Sales Order Sales Invoice settings there too. From the ribbon, select Actions, Contract Card. In the contract card, scroll to the Invoicing Fast tab. So we can see the differences. The project template was set to at shipment, So we'll change the sales order invoiced field from at shipment to through project. We'll also leave the two Boolean values as false for sales order creates usage and sales invoice creates usage. Going back to the Create Project wizard, we'll select that contract. The contract's values will take precedence over the project template values. Click Next to get back to the sales order sales invoice values, and we can see that they reflect those of the contract, not of the sales order sales invoice template that we used. In the Project wizard, we'll go ahead and finish it up and show you the new project site information that's also been added. These fields will also be available in the project card. Click Finish and then complete the task template fields and invoice setup template selection to complete the project creation. Return to the Role Center and Project list and select the new project that was just created. Scroll to the Invoicing Fast tab and note that the project's sales order sales invoice usage and invoicing settings were created with those of the contract we selected in the Project wizard. Also note that the project site was also populated with values that were entered in the Project wizard. If you create a new project from the project card by selecting the Create a New Entry plus symbol at the top of the page, the new project will take the sales order sales invoice settings from the project setup. In this example, we manually create a project using the Create New Entry option from the project card page. Scroll down to the Invoicing tab, and you'll see that the values used there were those from project setup for the sales order sales invoice fields. Again, if a contract number is added or changed on this project, the contract information will always take precedence. You can see here that it's updated the sales order sales invoice fields. When you create a project using the Project wizard and you specify just a project template, it will take the values from the template. If you specify a contract number and a template, the values will default from the contract. And if you don't use either a template or a contract, it will take the values from the project setup. Next, let's take a look at the sales order sales invoice fields from the contract. From the Role Center, select Contracts, Contract, and then highlight a contract and select Actions, Contract Card. This works the same way as when you create a project card. If you select the Create a New Entry plus symbol, it will use the values from the project setup to populate the new contract's sales order sales usage values and settings. To summarize, this flowchart provides information about what happens whether you select at shipment or through project when you select your project or contract settings for sales order, sales invoice. As it shows here, we have two options for invoicing: at shipment or through project. If at shipment is true, it creates an invoice using the line pricing. Then that line pricing will go over to create the sales price entries on the project. Next, if the sales order create usage is set to true, it will create a usage entry in the project ledger, and it will apply usage to sales entries and close lines. In the case where sales order create usage is set to false, it will not apply the sales entries, and it will leave them open. You would need to create a manual sales entry to close that open sales entry. Next, let's take a look at what happens when the Through Project option is on. If you have the option set to Through Project and you're trying to create an invoice, from the planning lines or manually for pricing amounts, it will not create zero sales price entries on the project, and it'll post. In this example, if the sales order or sales invoice create usage is set to true, then it will create a usage entry on the project ledger, and it will not apply usage entry no sales entries. If the sales order or sales invoice create usage is set to false or no, it will not apply sales entries, and will leave them open. Thanks for your time in reviewing what's new in Progressus Advanced Project Sales Orders, Sales Invoice, Usage relative to setup and project creation. For more information on inventory enhancements to advanced projects by Progressus, see the Advanced Projects Help content link included here.